Started in just a second as soon as we see the screen prompt from the technical staff. Thank you. Wow, November 13th. All right, well, looks like we're good to go. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. Welcome to the November 13th, 2024 Downtown Action Committee. And if we could start with a roll call, please.
Nick Mielich.
Present.
Roger Jansen.
Present.
Brian Chagas.
Present.
Michael Baxt.
Present.
Kim Doe.
Present.
Samuel Grace.
Present.
Let the record reflect that Gregory Gabriel is not present.
All right, perfect. Item 2, approval of minutes. You had minutes in your packet from the October hearing. Does anybody have any comments or corrections, deletions, or motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
So sorry. Brian Laura.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, Brian is here. Okay, awesome. There's a motion to approve the minutes from October. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion, second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Minutes approved. Item 3, report from City Urban Designer. Claudia.
Good morning, everyone. Claudia Babin, City Urban Designer. Just in case you are not aware of, tomorrow, Thursday, there will be the West Palm Beach Forum organized by the Urban Land Institute, starting at 12 p.m. in the Hilton. So there will be a lot of the program is very much related to West Palm, and there's a section about the downtown. So if you're available, please join. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Item 4, chairperson. I just had one comment. I'm not sure how many of you knew Rafael Saladrigas. He's a colleague, architect in town for a very long time. He passed away last month. So I just want to send our thoughts and prayers out to Rafael, his family, Sandra Sebin, his daughter, and just a great guy. He sat on this board for a number of years, so he a lot of contributions to the city, historic preservation, so we'll miss him dearly. We'll take just like a few seconds to send your thoughts to his family. Okay, great. Thanks, Raphael. Item 5, declaration, any ex parte communication for any of today's cases? Any board members? Kim?
Yes, I had a Zoom call with the applicant on case 2403 on the restaurant, but it would not, I had some further information, but it would not impact my ability to be impartial today.
Okay.
I also had a phone call, or a Zoom call with Keith Spina, architect, and that will not have any effect on my ability to judge impartially.
And
Yeah.
I too had a ex parte communication with Spina and a Zoom call. It won't impede my ability to be impartial.
Okay.
I had a Zoom call with Mr. Spina on DAC case number 2403. Should not have any impact on my decision-making this morning.
And then,
And in my case was 2403, just to let you
That's
know.
2403, okay.
And then I'll need to recuse myself from DAC case number 2402 and DAC case 2403.
Okay, so noted. And then I as well had a phone call with Mr. Spina on case 2403. Jay, you just explained the project to me, and it will not affect my ability to judge impartially today. And is that everybody? Okay, so noted. We'll go ahead and move into today's hearing, swearing in of speakers. Anyone that will be presenting testimony or speaking on the cases, please stand to be sworn in. And when you do speak, just stand up to the podium up here and state your name and address.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Great, thank you. Okay, today's cases, we'll start with TDR case 24-02. Ms. Lauren Thomas.
I wonder what she wants.
Good morning, Lauren Thomas with Touchstone Web Realty. This morning I'm here on behalf of Reverend Washington with 3rd and Division and 506-524 Datura Owner Street, LLC, about the 8,522 square feet of TDRs to be transferred. Receiving site is 6416 Street to 506-524 Datura Street in West Palm Beach. That's the receiving site. This amount will conclude the required TDRs for, or per the city, of just over 134,000 square feet of TDRs that were previously approved in 2021. The sending site underwent renovations. They've got about 8,778 square feet of TDRs available. They'll keep about 256 square feet on site. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. We'll hear from staff, please. Chris?
Good morning, Chris Kimmerly, Senior Urban Designer. This is TDR case 2402. Lauren covered the sending and receiving sites here. Staff concludes that the proposed transfer of development rights is in accordance of Article 4, Section 94-132, and we have provided a suggested motion to approve the transfer. If there are any questions.
Okay. There's nothing out of the ordinary, standard fare? Okay. Any questions for staff? Anyone? Okay, thanks, Chris.
I guess there's really no standard as long as it just complies.
Right.
You know?
Any comments from anyone in the audience on this case? Seeing none, we'll close public discussion. Any other questions or a motion?
Motion to approve granting transfer of development rights. I move that the Downtown Action Committee approve the transfer of development rights, DAC case number TDR 24-02, as listed in the staff report dated November 13th, 2024, as follows. A, the transfer of 8,522 square feet of TDRs from 641 6th Street to 506-524 Deterra Street pursuant to the requirements of Section 94-132.
Okay, motion, is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion or all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you,
Mr.
Lauren.
Chair, I have to recuse myself from DAC case number 2402 as well. I have conflict of interest.
Okay, so we still have plenty here for a quorum. Okay, thank you. Okay, the next case, DAC case 24-02. Request by NDT Development. Hear from the applicant, please.
Good morning, Damien Barr from NDT Development, here on behalf of Nora for the Nora District Development, case number 2402. We're just going to be looking through the signage along the street in the right-of-way in the district. We have 3 signs, different sign types. So this is just a plan view here. We're starting at 7th Street and we go all the way to 10th Street along North Railroad Avenue. The 3 different sign types, we have directory signs, then we have a parking sign, and a sort of a mixed valet rideshare sign along North Railroad. So type C, this is the directory signs, and some of the directory signs also have a parking element to it. We'll go through the general design and aesthetic. This is a visual here of a directory sign plus a P for parking on the east side of North Railroad Avenue. Here's just a view of it. We're using sort of concrete base, an epave wood with a steel upright vertical and some ceramic tile on the posts and on the signage, and all the signage is very, very similar. This is the same post from a different view. And then there's the primary parking sign, which is this one. It doesn't have anything else on the signage except for the parking, just indicating where the parking is on the street. There's surface parking on the east side of North Railroad Avenue, and this shows people how to get there, to wayfinding. It's the exact same materials as the other sign that I just explained. And here's the third sign, which is the the rideshare drop-off, valet parking sign, which is up and down the street, and the cutouts that we have along North Railroad Avenue on the east and west side of the street. Yeah, all of these designs have been obviously designed to fit within the district character. The buildings is a mix of old and new. I think you know that. There's existing warehouses and there's some new construction as well. And the aesthetic of these signs match up with what we've designed in the buildings in the street. And that's really it for the signage. Thank you.
Good morning again. Chris Kimmerly, Senior Urban Designer. This is for DAC case 2402 here. This is regarding a minor amendment to kind of propose these district signs within the previously approved face of the city approval for the North Railroad Avenue project there. So this is going to go before City Commission again, and the reason that the DAC board is hearing it today is because it is an improvement to a right-of-way within the downtown. And these signs are located wholly within the public right-of-way and not on private property. Generally, with the sign structure, design, and concept, staff has no objection to the proposed signage. Currently, the city is undergoing a proposal to redo its sign plan. This is a citywide sign plan that will be coming forward hopefully fairly soon. And within that, we kind of specify a few more different types of signage that we don't have in today's codes. Some of those include this directory signage, parking signage, things like that. So staff just requests that when these signs do come in for permitting, that the signs dimensionally will be adjusted to be more in accordance with the upcoming sign code. Currently, as they're proposed, these signs are pretty close. I think in terms of height, they're about 7 feet 9 inches. Our current sign plan has these types of signs at 7 feet. So it's a slight adjustment in terms of the overall height of the structures. In terms of sign face, what is being presented today would be in compliance with that sign code. Otherwise, again, at the time of permitting, staff and engineering staff as well will just coordinate on the exact locations of where these signs will go within the right-of-way to ensure that they don't conflict with any utilities or landscaping. And with that, again, staff recommends a motion to recommend approval to the City Commission for the signage with 3 conditions. The first condition is, again, that the applicant will work with planning and engineering staff at the time of permitting to revise any dimensions and coordinate the locations. And that is number 2 as well there. And then number 3 is just to reiterate that this is a face of the city approval for the Nora district. This is essentially Nora's master sign plan for their right-of-way signage. So any new signage that they put up within the right-of-way has to conform with these standards. And any new signage that isn't outlined would follow then the city's code, unless amended by another face of the city. Is there any questions?
Any immediate questions for staff, or we can come back later?
I got a couple questions. Just it might be more of a detailed design, but it has to do with the planter and putting the plant in the sign. I'm not sure if that's a real strong requirement from the city or from the developer, but I think it's one of those things where it looks good on paper, but the reality is that it would be very difficult to be successful in the field for a couple reasons. If that's a real plant or a real vine, I think you have a concrete footer right below the planter. So essentially you got a steel post and a concrete footer. If it's going to have irrigation, that irrigation is going to flood the planter. It's going to look terrible. It's going to overflow. Long story short, if the developer is amenable to it, can the landscaping occur, to the side of the sign, perhaps in a pot or some kind of streetscape amenity versus trying to make a planter and a sign go together. It's kind of like two, in my opinion, conflicting entities, right? Somebody's got to keep trimming the vines so you can see the sign. Why have that problem in constant maintenance unless there's a program where you're going to design this little planter pot with irrigation and drainage and everything's going to work fine, and somebody's on maintenance going to trim the vine and everything's going to look great? That's fine if you can commit to that. I just kind of see problems with this design, and I wondered if that was part of the requirement or if the owner had some particular detailed design on that.
Yeah, it's not part of the requirement, and it's definitely more of a vine type situation, application, to give it a little bit more softness around the steel post that comes up. Yeah, I mean, we think we'll be able to maintain it and keep it looking good.
Will there be automatic irrigation and drainage to these?
There is planned irrigation and drainage, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, as long as it's part of the program and maintenance, then I think that's great that you're committed to that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have any immediate questions for staff or the applicant? Go ahead, Kim.
Yes, I have a question for staff. With the anticipated sign plan, sign code, did you take into account all the OSHA requirements? I know like OSHA have very minute detailed requirements on like the height from the ground to the bottom of the sign, and then the height, to the height on the top of the sign, and then the font size and the font typeface, sans serif, and all of these very minute details. So will the new code encompass all those?
Yes, from what I understand, and I'm not directly working on this, the sign code amendment has had a consultant brought on board to look at the current sign code and then propose the new language. So they are reviewing that to be compliant. In terms of this signage specifically here, again, our right-of-way team, our engineering team, again, will look and make sure that these signs meet visibility requirements, clearance requirements, ADA requirements, things like that. Because again, they are located within the public right-of-way and not on private property.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I mean, is the new sign code going to have language as far as requiring that the contents of the sign must be visible? So if all of a sudden the vines are covering it, they could be required to clean it up, or could that be a condition that we could impose?
If there is any obstructions of the signage,
Right.
you're saying? I mean, maintenance like that is typically something we would write into a maintenance agreement for the right-of-way. So if the signage is going within that right-of-way along the North Railroad Avenue street, when we process that maintenance agreement, we include any landscape furnishings, things like that. So that would be their responsibility as the developer installing these to maintain them.
But would it be in there as far as that the content must be visible, because typically you're not going to have vines on a sign. There's probably no anticipation of having language like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is something that we could condition. I don't think the current iteration of that language includes something like that.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Any other immediate questions? Okay.
I had one question about the location of the signs. It's part of a overall wayfinding system. How do you have an overall map of where they're located?
Yes, let me pull that.
Because I know people are traversing down a path and they're going to want to see those. It's kind of maybe in a nodal area.
So again, this is just a snapshot from 7th Street here on the left, all the way up to, I believe, 10th Street is here on the right. These are, again, the preliminary locations, so they are at prominent corners, along the right-of-way, between landscape beds, so the sidewalks themselves are not impeded. It's more so in the gaps between the landscaping and so forth that they're located now. Again, within this plan, there may be some conflicts that you see with the trees and such, and that is to staff's point that at the time of permitting, engineering, right-of-way staff and planning staff will look at this and make sure that there is no conflicts with any utilities or landscaping.
Okay, so any visual kind of impediments from the landscape and the vines will be kind of maintained so they can kind of visually see the
Right.
typography from a distance and close up, kind of the micro view. Okay. Different scales. Interesting. Okay.
You good, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
So
Thank
we've
you.
heard from the applicant staff. Why don't we go ahead and see if there's any public comment on this case? Seeing no public comment, we'll close public discussion and take any other questions. I have a couple of comments, but go ahead.
Oh, I'm thinking of, well, just what's everyone's view on having a condition that they must make sure there's a condition within their maintenance agreement with the city that they must keep the content clear of vine so that the content is always visible, or something to that effect.
Yeah, okay. Someone can put that in a motion. I'm just guessing, though, that the standards for impediments that Brian was talking about in terms of the public works and safety is something that can be code enforcement within the city in terms of safety components, and then that the developer is going to want to maintain their signs regardless to make sure they're beautiful and effective. So, but we can just reinforce that with a motion. My other question, Damien, real quick question on the materials. Is the steel, is it a Corten steel? It shows up in the renderings as a rusty brown.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I told you I knew what steel that was.
I mean,
but
that'd be my only recommendation to look at that, because then the longevity of the finish is going to maintain it, and it sort of has that nice reference to the railroad and the railroad ties, so on and so forth. So I like the design and the gesture, and assuming you had your professionals work out all the details, which I'm sure you did, it looks good. My only caution would be the Ipe on the base.
Yep.
It's probably going to be a maintenance nightmare.
Right.
I mean, if your design team would maybe consider something else that might help you guys in the maintenance and longevity, whether it's steel or concrete, something to be in that industrial vein, and then you don't have to worry about the Ipe, especially at the base, at the ground.
Right.
It's just going to be a disaster. So
Okay.
just think about that. Otherwise, I think it's, good as long as it's compliant with the city guidelines and your professional developer's eyes, it's good by me.
Right,
Any
thank
other?
you.
Yeah,
Just-
thanks.
Just
Any other comments?
one real quick comment to, I think it might have been mentioned, is to basically understand the sight lines. We just had another project where beautiful directory signs, look great on paper, but when you got into the field, there was, a light pole and a sign, and it just blocked your view, and we didn't realize it. And it's one of those things where you just don't see it until you get there. And with this heavily amenitized streetscape, I can imagine a lot of utility equipment, light poles, tree trunks, banners, etc.
Yeah.
So just as the design process, if it comes down to little tweaks to move it 10 feet so everybody sees it, that's just something I think would be worth doing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's an interesting comment, because I think we've all been places where we look at signage and we think, what were these guys thinking?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe it's interesting. Maybe the professionals do it, and you look at your line drawings; they look great. But maybe the perspective view from a driver's perspective, sitting in a car, driving down a road, just to confirm that everything works. But I'll leave it up to you guys. So, all right, thank you. Any other comments or questions or a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move that the Downtown Action Committee recommend approval with conditions for the Nora District signage concept presented with the DAC case number 2402 to the City Commission as listed in the staff report dated November 13, 2024 as follows. Applicant to work with planning and engineering staff to adjust the final overall sign dimensions and structure heights to be consistent with the anticipated citywide signage ordinance that the city and its signage consultant are actively finalizing. Prior to permitting, final locations of signs shall be coordinated with most recent as-built conditions for utilities and landscaping to avoid potential conflicts. This proposal shall serve as NORA's master sign program. Any new signage within the right-of-way adjacent to the NORA sub-districts must meet the typologies and standards set within the master plan. Any new signage not outlined within the plan will be subject to the city's signage code regulations unless the master plan is formally amended through an additional phase of city process. Additionally, the applicant shall work with the city staff to ensure that any maintenance agreement for the sign has sufficient conditions to require that the contents of the sign remain free of coverage by any landscaping.
And were you adding another condition or no?
I'm sorry?
Were you adding another condition?
That was the condition, the last thing I
That's
just
it.
said.
It's good,
yeah.
perfect, okay. There's a motion. There's a
Second?
There's a second. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right, we move on to the next item. 3, Downtown Action Committee case number 24-03. Request by Harvey Orr, Schutz and Bowen, LLP, on behalf of Brand Atlantic LLC. If we could hear from the applicant, please. Oh, hey, let the record show.
I'll wait until
Greg-
everyone
Yeah, Gregory's
returns.
here, and Brian's coming back, and Sam is still out on this one. All right, now we're ready, Mr. Oyer.
Is Sam not participating in this one?
He is not.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Downtown Action Committee. For the record, Harvey Oyer of Schutz and Bowen on behalf of the applicant, which is the 301 Clematis combination with 300 Banyan. Some of you might not have had the benefit of being on DAC 3 years ago when this case was approved by you. I want to give you a brief update. All good news. It is completed, topped off. Office portion will open before the end of the year. And we are here for 2 reasons, both of which I'd characterize as very minor. A very minor variance request that has come up since our approval 3 years ago, and the staff request that if that variance were to be granted, that you please relook at the Olive Avenue ground floor elevation, because it's a little bit different than what was shown to you 3 years ago. So with that, I will jump in and provide a little bit of background, because I think several of you were not here at the time. The site location is 301 Clematis, which is a historic building. We all know it as the Galleria building, has a long, wonderful history. And then what was, for many years, all of our lifetime, a surface parking lot behind it at the southwest corner of Banyan and Olive. And the same developer purchased both and combined them rather uniquely so that they meld together across the alley and utilize the alley as an active use, which has been a long-standing public policy goal in the downtown that has never really been effectuated the way we all envisioned it. There is a 2-part request before you this morning. One is your review of the previously approved variance on a ground floor Olive Avenue side active use, and by the way, that percentage is not changing. It's just the look of it that is changing, and staff wanted you to have a look at it. And the second is a new variance in a very limited area of 30 feet along that Olive Avenue frontage, where we are proposing to put a decorative architectural treatment. It's considered a, quote, fence under your code. I don't know that it fits squarely within any other definition, so we're calling it a fence. And fences are limited to 4 feet in height. And in this limited 30-foot section of it, it will exceed 4 feet. It is proposed to be at 7 feet. So that is the variance that we are seeking your review on. Just a little bit more background from the 2021 approval. You approved a special review of the site plan, and I've highlighted for you the relevant portion of the variance that you approved, which was reduced ground floor active use from 80% to 62% along Olive Avenue. You can ignore the Banyan portion, that's not relevant today. Incidentally, the project was approved as a whole, so the active use requirement of 80% was from Banyan all the way back to Clematis. So not just the 300 Banyan parking lot, you considered it as a whole. So that variance from 80% to 62% was both buildings combined. This is the development program that was approved in 2021. Just to give you a flavor for what the program was, it included a complete renovation of the historic Galleria building, designating it historic, and a building on the surface parking lot, the new office tower that you've seen. I'm sure you've admired it. It's a spectacular piece of architecture and a great addition to our downtown. And how those two come together with an alley bisecting them, and how we in the CRA have collectively spent $5 million undergrounding all the utilities in that alley, changing the surface to a decorative paver surface so that it looks like these two buildings are merged together in the public realm. Now, the relevant portion of your review standards for today I've highlighted at the bottom. And the words that are relevant, I'll just read to you. The proposed development should enhance the quality of the public realm. Enhancement may be determined based upon the provision of open space, public amenities, landscaping, or building design with features that contribute to the viability and attractiveness of the public realm. So that's pretty broad discretion that is granted to you as the Downtown Action Committee to make these determinations as to what does enhance the public realm. And that's what's under discussion today. Again, in 2021, the variance was granted to allow 2 outdoor dining areas, one on Olive, one on Banyan. We're not considering the one on Banyan. The one on Banyan was fairly small. It was a cafe. The large one was a full-service restaurant on Olive Avenue, and that is the one that we are discussing today. This is the percentage difference between the 80% required by code and the 62% that you granted 3 years ago. Again, we are not proposing a change in this percentage. It will be identical. It's just how this decorative feature that's being characterized as a fence is different from what you viewed 3 years ago. So you are looking at the bottom of your screen, the Olive Avenue side, and the active use requirement is from Banyan to Clematis, and it must be 80% of the frontage. This is probably a more helpful image because this area, well, incidentally, you're probably looking at this saying, how does this not meet the 80% requirement? You have store frontage or restaurant frontage, a lobby into the office of the Galleria building, more restaurant or retail frontage. The alley doesn't count. And then, as you'll see, we proposed an outdoor restaurant. And then the lobby of this office building, it's virtually 100% active use. How did we find ourselves in a variant situation? And I'll tell you what that is. This portion of it, which I've cross-hatched in red, cannot count as an active use because it is not enclosed. Under your code, one of the quirks of the code that hopefully we revisit when the DMP is revisited in the coming year, is that no matter how much active use you put on the sidewalk or in the public realm, if it is not enclosed, it doesn't count. And I'll share with you the imagery that you approved 3 years ago, together with the imagery that we're asking you to approve today, and you will see that all of that is actively utilized by human beings interacting with the human beings in the public realm on the sidewalk as well as the alley. But due to this quirk in the code, unless there's a piece of glass there enclosing it, we cannot count it. So that is how that active use variance arose in the first place. This is the proposed ground floor plan, a restaurant in the Galleria building on the north side, outdoor dining in the alley that has already received its $5 million of improvements. This is the restaurant, the large full-service restaurant, but all of it is not enclosed, so it does not count towards the definition of active use. And then there is the lobby to the office building, which does. So this is the area we are discussing this morning. This is the image that was shared with you 3 years ago by a developer, the applicant, the owner of the property, who's not a restaurant operator. The concept was there would be outdoor dining with human activity. This was part of the justification and mitigation for you granting the active use variance, which you readily did, and it was unanimous because this obviously meets the spirit and intent of the code. And here is the utilization of the alley, and then it interfaces with F&B operation in the Clematis building. So this is what you reviewed. Again, this is what you reviewed from a different perspective. Again, the same active use here being glued together by the use in the alley to the outdoor restaurant in the Banyan building. And this is what we're proposing today, which you will notice still meets the spirit and intent, which is people dining in the improved alley, people dining in the public realm and next to the public realm, and the same operation is in the Clematis building. What is the difference? The difference is this proposed architectural treatment that is 7 feet high. It meets the transparency requirement. I'll show you the material, and the architect, Keith Spina, is here to speak to it directly. So there's no transparency issue, but it is a barrier, and that is being characterized as a fence. And for most of the length of this fence, because it is not in the setback area, it doesn't require a variance. There is one piece hidden behind the tree that's about 29.5 feet long that is between the minimum and maximum setbacks, which means it does require a variance, and that is what we are before you this morning. Same two perspectives from 3 years ago, so you can see that the concept is still the same. The developer is not retraded on this idea, but what he discovered when he interviewed a number of potential restaurant operators is none of them could deal with the situation, and I will explain what that is, but it has to do with the safety and security of your cash registers, your bar area at night, how you secure that after hours, how you create some sense of, auditory privacy, visual privacy when you have an active alley on the other side of the street. You have a 4-story public parking garage on the other side of the street. You have traffic and headlights and honking and delivery trucks. How do you make that a pleasant dining experience, which is different than Clematis? If you're wondering, doesn't Clematis have outdoor dining? They do, but the deliveries on Clematis normally occur from the rear alleys. So we're in a slightly different situation than Clematis. Now, how do other locations deal with this problem? These are two examples from Miami that I think are very illustrative of what we're trying to avoid. Outdoor dining bar concept in the upper left-hand corner, outdoor dining bar concept in the lower left-hand corner, both of which were approved and intended to operate and look like the left-hand side of your screen. The reality of how they operate is they're roll-down plastic that they put down at night to secure the site. They wind up keeping it down during their operating hours for the reasons I just explained. And that is not what we want, and it's certainly not what Miami wanted or expected when they approved what was on the left, and instead they received operationally what appears to be a fully enclosed building. We can do that by right, and that's our alternative, and we could just do the roll downs to solve the problem, but we don't want to do that because we think it looks bad for us and it looks bad for you, and that is how we arrived at our proposed solution. So this leads us to the variance request. Here's the portion of the code. I've underlined it. Fences along a lot frontage shall be a maximum height of 4 feet. We are seeking 7 feet for a 29.5-foot portion of that. And here's what that looks like. We rounded it up to 30 feet. It's this area. So the 7-foot decorative barrier will be in this location. That doesn't require a variance. But once you get between these two red lines, which is the minimum setback requirement and the maximum setback requirement, that's where we need your approval. Now, let me explain to you how, active this is. Not only are there human beings all over the sidewalk, this is the access point to the restaurant. That's why you don't see a red line there. That's where you come in and the hostess greets you and takes you to your table. So the entire outward-facing element of this restaurant is onto Olive. I find it personally astonishing that this doesn't count as active use. It is nothing but active use. I think it's a idiosyncrasy of your code that has us here this morning. This is the portion we're seeking your approval to go from 4 feet, which we could do by right, to 7 feet, which is what we're requesting of you. At this point, I'm going to ask Keith Spina, the architect of record on this project, to come talk to you about why he chose that material, because it is transparent and allows it to breathe, yet it creates a sense of a barrier between the indoor dining and the outdoor dining and allows us to drop those plastic roll-up from the ceiling just to the top of the 7-foot barrier, rather than having to drop it all the way to the ground, which is our alternative, and we don't think that's in your best interest or our best interest. So with that, I'll turn it over to Keith. Thank you. Right there.
Okay. Good morning, Keith Spina, Spina O'Rourke. I shared part of this story with a lot of you, and thanks for taking your time then and today as well. So I'll keep it quick. You know, Harvey does all the good stuff and makes it kind of easy. But so I think Harvey, you know, by the way, I walked from office, which happens to be catty corner of this building, and I walked through the alley and today to get here, and even today they had some construction going on and there's a big truck. It's still, I mean, it's a fabulous space. You know, there was some intentions by the city and the CRA earlier to try to activate alleys, and we did that in an alley a couple blocks south, and it was okay. But to find another developer that's investing in the city and pulling off what they've done with this alley is really remarkable. I think I mentioned a couple of you that I know live and work downtown. Walk by it, walk through it. It's pretty amazing. But the other part that was interesting is we had planned the original tenants fit out for the entire building. It was a super creative idea. You know, I was here when we presented it to DAC, to a lot of you, and we approved this idea, and it was unique and interesting. The odds, though, of actually finding a tenant that could fill exactly the way we had envisioned the space. I mean, this building has attracted and will continue to attract world-class tenants from some of the biggest and best, whether it's office or retail or F&B. And to find a tenant, which happens to be Kima, it's a concept out of New York. They have a couple of incredible locations, and they fit in the slot just perfectly. And so the one thing, though, that Harvey touched on, when they fit in the slot, they came to us and said, look, we love your vision, we love the ideas, but some of this stuff doesn't work. Like, we're experts. And so that's where we started to, and what we think of as just the most minor tweaks to the design of the space. So as Harvey mentioned, what we all know of the Galleria is now called 111 Olive and then 300 Banyan, which is the new building. And the space identified in yellow is how we envision an F&B operator. And that's exactly what Kima is going to do. They're going to take the ground floor north side of 111 Olive, and they're going to put their kitchen and some indoor dining, and they continue to expand across the alley through the base of 300, and then they're going to have a rooftop bar and entertainment area on the top of 300 Banyan. So again, that was a slide we showed in 2021 with this yellow. And today, that's exactly what we've been able to execute. Here's a quick plan just showing how Kima, some of the other tenants in the building. And then, Harvey's gone through this already. I think the things that we had some slight, I'm just going to jump to the renderings, and we'll get back to some of this if you have questions. But first of all, I've lived in West Palm and our office has always been downtown, and everybody knows it. This is what it looked like. It was a parking lot. And when this developer came and said, we want to build a super class A office building at this location, and get rid of the on-grade parking lot, we thought, really ambitious, but really incredible. And today, this is a picture looking from my office at the site, and I know most of you have been by it and seen it. As an architect in town who very involved in the city of West Palm Beach, very involved with other developers, listen to what they're doing. This is the most discussed building in my professional life today. Everybody wants to know about this building. Everybody wants to go to the building. Everybody wants to compliment this building. And there's some stiff competition in town. Some other developers that are building world-class buildings, and the thoughts that we hear is how incredible it is. And most of the conversation we hear is it is the best Class A office building in West Palm Beach. And we agree. Maybe a little biased, but we agree. The artwork's in place. Again, these are pictures taken, just several days ago. There is some construction screening because the ground floor of this building is uncompleted, so until we can get Keyman and start construction. But the alley, again, I walked down it today. It has a awning above it that could be used when there's F&B. The pavers, the bollards, just the coordination of it all has been incredible. So the murals, on the Olive Avenue building, and I think Harvey touched on it. The screen screening that we've talked about is the red line, but the yellow portion is the only part that we're technically. So then so we've been working with Kima. They have an interior design firm out of Greece. It's a Mediterranean concept. They presented and shared a lot of different creative ideas on the screening. I think, the thing that we wanted to avoid at all costs, and Harvey touched on it, was this, the alternative would be the roll down screens. We just did the Bar Capri on the top of Elisabetta's, and on a lot of days, just because of the wet weather, they roll that screen down, and it's not the nicest place inside or outside when that screen's rolled down. So to have a creative solution that provided a really sophisticated architectural treatment at the ground level and deal with it there as opposed to coming from the top down, we love it, we support it. It's even kind of in some strange way, the decorative masonry and the color of it looks consistent with the city of West Palm Beach. This is one of our historical architectural styles. This is kind of a funny slide, and I think this is part of our conversation when we presented in 2021. The image on the right is a exact requirement, and if you do this, you can build active uses all day long in buildings. You put a piece of glass, most people put a piece of window treatment inside of it, and that's what we call an active use. And so you can almost see that there's some tables and chairs behind that. Maybe you could tell if there's people behind it, but compared to the transparency of our decorative masonry. So we were super excited when DAC and the city and the CRA and the developer all agreed to do something a little bit more creative and unique in this building when it was approved previously. And it's funny to look back now and say, well, how does that compare? Why don't we just fill it with glass, And so we're excited with the solution. We think it's going to be a great example to set the bar for people moving forward in the city. And then again, Harvey's done this, I'll do it quick, but what was presented and approved highly active use along the sidewalk in 2021, and then a slight variation, which is the introduction of the low planter. What was presented in 2021 again, and then the low planter, and then you can see this portion of the decorative masonry wall that you see, as Harvey mentioned, is not part of the variance request. The only portion that's a part of the variance is just the little bit up on the corner. Another really important part, and it happened today, I walked over here, and currently trucks, we all know this, right? They unfortunately just stop in the middle of Olive Avenue and load and unload, and there's a lot of construction activity, food deliveries. And so the city, though, has designated the area on Olive Avenue adjacent to this space, but on the east side of Olive Avenue, adjacent to the Banyan Garage, as a future truck loading. And so not only is it there today in the middle of the road or on our side, but in the future it will be a designated loading zone for any deliveries to downtown. And so in addition to the operational needs that we think are critical to the success of a restaurant, it also is a real creative way to provide some buffering against things like this. And this is all day, every day. You guys have driven around it and seen it. And with that, maybe I'll turn it back over to Harvey. Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Thank you, Keith. So to summarize, what is before you is what I think is very minor variance on a section of that decorative element that Keith has come up with, and I compliment him for that. I think it's a great solution. And again, I would encourage you, I know that we're headed into the coming year with a new consultant to relook at our downtown master plan, and I think things like this should be examined, because I find it, again, astonishing that we can have 100% of our Olive Avenue frontage with human beings interacting with the public realm, and we needed a variance to do that. So hopefully that's something we can relook at. And the second part of our request, other than the variance, is staff asking you to revisit what was approved 3 years ago and make sure that we're still honoring the spirit and intent of that, which I certainly think we are. We could not have guessed 3 years ago who the operator would be. We frankly thought the city would have addressed the homelessness and crime problem in the downtown by now, and that has not yet occurred, unfortunately. So we deal with the same issues that I think every restaurateur in the downtown deals with. So until the city can clean up their act on homelessness and crime in the downtown, it's very hard to attract a world-class operator like this one to want to operate in our downtown. And again, I'll leave you with this image because it certainly honors all of the spirit and intent. And I compliment the developer not only for building what Keith accurately characterized as, maybe the most sought after boutique Class A office building in Florida, but he delivered everything that he said he would do, including integrating the ground floor of 2 buildings, a new one and a historic one, and activating the alley, which is, I don't need to tell all of you, but that has been a long-standing goal of our CRA and our City Commission to utilize the alleys that bisect every block in the original plan of downtown West Palm. That is what creates a barrier and a separation and a safety concern for all of us. And it has not been done effectively. It was attempted once, it was abandoned, it's no longer used. This is a developer and an operator that are finally going to set the precedent for how to utilize these alleys for the public benefit. And I don't think we're asking for much relief here in order to safely accomplish that. So with that, Mr. Chair and board members, thank you for your time and attention. We stand ready to answer any of your questions. The developer and owner of the project is here as well to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Super. Thanks, Harvey. We'll have questions, or I will later, but we'll go ahead and hear from staff and then come back to you. Thank you. Very thorough. Appreciate it. Chris?
Good morning, Chris Kimmerly, Senior Urban Designer, DAC Case 2403. As Harvey had mentioned, this is a request for a variance from Section 94-109, Definitions and Minimum Requirements, for our definition of fence. This is specifically to allow a fence at a maximum height of 7 feet along a lot frontage. That's a 3-foot increase from the permitted of 4 feet. We do also request the reevaluation or reconsideration of the previous variance that was granted. Again, this is just to reiterate the reasoning and space that was presented the first time versus what is presented today. We just had some concerns with the design concept. To get right off to it, again, city staff does support the overall project. We do support the restaurant use and the tenant that has been selected. It sounds like a very unique opportunity within the downtown, and it's a very unique way to activate this ground floor area. However, looking at it objectively, the city staff does recommend a denial on the variance request for the fence height regarding the fact that staff determined that it does not meet all 10 of the variance standards as outlined in Section 9438. And additionally, staff has concerns with the revised design of that ground floor restaurant space due to the conditions of the above fence. Again, here are the criteria for granting the variance. Staff has determined that it does not meet 5 of the 10. I'll go into those a little bit later on in the presentation. So regarding the variance request itself, it's important here to see that the definition of fence within our DMP code today, this pertains specifically to a freestanding structure of any material or combination of materials erected for confinement, screening, or partition purposes. So under this definition, their decorative wall would count as a fence. This definition has been interpreted and enforced for many different freestanding structures, including chain link fences, wood vinyl fences, metal rod fences, masonry walls, retaining walls, privacy screens, you name it. It falls under this definition of fence and those height requirements. Getting into lot frontage, this is an important note to make as well. In the definition of fence, we say along the lot frontage. So lot frontage is a single plane along a public right-of-way or public space. And rather than interpreting this very strictly in the past, planning staff, city staff has interpreted this to include the area between the minimum and maximum setbacks. We believe that once you get beyond the maximum setback, you're really interior to the site. You're not actively engaging with the public realm, with the right-of-way. And for that reason, the lot frontage is truly what is within your setback constraints. And again, for this project specifically, along North Olive Avenue, your setbacks are from 16 feet from the back of the curb to 30 feet is the maximum. So this is the area that we're talking about. This is the proposal that the applicant has provided. So as you can see here, the area within yellow is the area between the setbacks. This is the area we're talking about. They currently have a wall proposed within their plan that is outside this 30-foot setback. That is not subject to the variance request today. The variance request really is for this 30-foot section here. And to that, staff has spoken with the applicant, met with the applicant during the design process of this, and has presented 3 viable alternatives, which we believe would still achieve their goals of having separation and privacy, but also keeping a very open feel to this space. The first, again, is to build what was originally approved at the DAC a few years back. So this was the rendering shown. Again, very open concept. This was kind of refined with an additional render here and plan. And again, what we see here highlighted in red are the 3 planters. These were low-scale planters, about 4 feet in height. Again, allowed a passerby to actively have sight lines into the property and out of the property there for patrons. But it did create, a barrier, a defined area that is occupied for the restaurant dining versus what is the public right-of-way for pedestrians. The only wall within this design at the time was a wall set back beyond the maximum setback. So that's this one here in the blue. Again, very open concept. The second alternative staff has presented is moving that wall from being within the setbacks to, again, match the wall to its left there and being outside the maximum setback. Staff feels like there is no loss of efficiency or operation space for the tenant, as they currently provide dining space here in front of this wall. So should this wall move back forward as well, again, there is still ample space and room for additional tables and chairs should the tenant so wish to do that. And the last alternative, again, is really just lowering the decorative wall that they're requesting of 7 feet down to the minimum or to the maximum required of 4 feet, and then providing different alternatives, whether that is an additional landscape planter, landscaping, something that is more of a softer edge rather than the hard built structure of the perforated masonry wall. Oops, apologies, going too far ahead. And so in addition to the variance request, staff has, again, asked that we revisit the open space concept for its design. Regarding active use, again, the definition of active use is very important here. So in section 94-109, as active use, part of that definition includes a direct view to the adjacent streets or a public open space. Specifically for active use at a ground floor, again, the active use is meant to attract pedestrian activity, provide direct access to the general public from the sidewalk or an open space. This is the, again, concept provided by the applicant today. The areas here in blue are the decorative masonry wall at 7 feet in height. And then the area in red includes the mesh roll downs for weatherproofing. And the fear, again, while they say this is not the intent, the fear here is that this space with the mesh roll downs does become an enclosed area. Having the addition of the wall plus the screens, we feel like this space really becomes closed off from the public realm and the public right-of-way. And the issue with that is that this project has maximized its FAR. So the reason for this ground floor having this very open, transparent design was because the FAR was utilized within the office space. So the ground floor couldn't be built out, the ground floor couldn't be enclosed with a storefront system. The design was purposely meant to be open air and highly visible. And we feel that, again, the combination of the 7-foot high wall in that section, in addition to the mesh roll downs, really starts to teeter on that line of becoming an enclosed space rather than what was intended to be very open. Getting into the specific variance standards itself, I'll touch on these briefly here. So letter B here, actions of the applicant. Staff believes that this does not comply. This is because this is entirely the design choice of the applicant and the tenant there. You know, there are viable alternatives which can reduce that fence height, or the wall height rather, or relocate the wall or provide some other alternative, whether it be cutouts, things like that, that give more additional open sight lines. Special privileges, on letter C there, we feel like it does not comply, as again, this would incur a special privilege to this specific tenant, this specific use. Again, this definition of fence has been interpreted on any freestanding structure, decorative fence, masonry walls, things like that. So we feel that this would be a special privilege on this particular instance. The literal interpretation of the code would not deprive the applicant of rights enjoyed by other properties within this subdistrict or other uses similar to this one. Again, any other development within the Clematis Waterfront District would be required to provide a 4-foot high fence or wall. So this would be a special exception to that. Letter E there, the minimum request. Again, staff feels that there are alternatives on the table that have not been explored. Therefore, the request is not the minimum. Again, they could reduce that height even further. The additional 7 feet is excessive of that maximum that we have in the code. And then lastly, letter H there, the reasonable use. Again, the variance request, whether it's granted or not, does not prevent the applicant from reasonably using that ground floor space. We are talking about a 30-foot section on the ground floor with the wall. Seating can be put in front of it, behind it, and again, that fence can be relocated within their configurations. For public notice, again, for this project specifically, public notices were sent to all property owners within 500 feet of the project site. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Maybe an immediate question that might help inform us here as we study all of these facts and findings. Can you go back to your diagram with the blue and the red?
Yep.
The site plan floor plan? Shut up. Just want to make sure we're clear on what's allowed by right and what's a component of this request.
Of their proposed or what?
That's a good diagram right there. Okay. So by right, that area has to be open, not by right, by this approval, that has to remain open because they max the FAR on the rest of the balance of the building?
Yeah, so in terms of the, space occupied here, this had to be an open design because they could not enclose
Right. Everything
the
that's
structure,
not
put it
gray.
under walls and air and, yeah.
Everything that's not gray, the white, was approved to remain open because of the FAR. Okay. What's allowed, and they're allowed to have a 4-foot high wall or fence, correct?
Yeah, so again, going back to this diagram here, within the minimum and maximum setback,
Right.
we standardize, the code specifies that we need a 4-foot high wall as the maximum that you can provide.
So the
The
one,
moment you go outside of that maximum setback, that's where we say, whether you want a 5, 6, 7-foot high fence, it doesn't matter because again, it's beyond the maximum setback, it's beyond the public realm, it's interior to the property. So where they have that existing, that is our suggestion. If this wall that is within the minimum and maximum was moved back, they would be in compliance.
Got you. So to the left, on the south side, that wall is within or past the max setback, so it could be full height
Yeah,
all the way to the underside of the soffit?
yeah.
Okay. And how do the roll-down screen enclosures fit into any of those categories? Are they allowed to have those by right, anywhere beyond that yellow zone?
Yes, and so in terms of within the yellow zone, again, we don't really specify the weatherproofing mesh roll downs because it's not a freestanding structure, so it's an element of the building facade. But
That would
beyond that area, yes.
It still has to be beyond that maximum setback? Okay. Is there an image anywhere that shows the proposed variance wall component, that area without the tree in the way? It's like the one thing we're looking at.
Right,
It's blocked
the
by-
one
it's
important
blocked by-
thing we have no
We
image
have
of.
a render, unfortunately.
That was convenient.
Yeah.
Is there a line drawn, just an elevation, an architectural elevation that shows the walls? So just again, for clarification for everybody, so the blue line to the left, so that's 7 feet of terracotta breeze block.
Right.
And the roll down will come down on top of that for security. And to the left, the blue section, it's the same. So there's two openings that will have full height roll down screens?
So yes,
On
there's
the
an
south-
opening here. This is the entry. And
Right, that will have a full height roll down security screen?
Sure.
Where the blue does not exist on that diagram.
So the roll down's going to go past the wall to the ground. And
It's going to be inside the wall?
it's going to be on the outside of the wall to go down to the ground, secured to the ground, because it's a hurricane rated roll down.
Oh, so it's gonna
it's
all the
mostly
way-
for security at night, so we don't have to empty the entire, F&B operation.
But it goes to
And
the
then-
ground on the outside of the wall?
Yes,
All right,
right.
so you'll fully see the screen. Is that regulated at all by city code, the hours that can be open or closed?
We've done these around town, again, other places, not necessarily on the ground floor, but
All right.
I don't know of a regulation, but I'll let my friends here say that.
No, we do not regulate that.
Does not, okay. And then the far bottom right, the northeast corner that's just low planter height? That does not have the
It's a
full
little
height?
small plant.
Right, no terracotta there?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
the dotted blue is the terracotta. From the red line down and over is the only portion we're talking about. Everything else is allowed by right.
Okay, I think I'm clear. Does anybody have any clarification questions for staff or the applicant? We'll come back later with other discussion, but
Right.
just as far as the.
So I guess if they move the wall back, it just means you've got less seating area.
Right.
Yeah, so again, we had all kinds of great, creative concepts originally. We had bars on this area, we had them different locations. The plan today, though, that makes a really successful opportunity for Kima has a bar, and it has a certain amount of seating area around the bar, and then it has a separate dining area open. All of this is completely open to the inside viewing in and out, but then there's also a portion of seating that creates a little bit more intimate dining area with banquettes and things like that. So yeah, if we moved, that would have been too easy, right? If we would have just moved it inside, it wipes out the majority of, if not all of, the sit-down table height dining around the bar, which is critically important to Kima's operation. So
Is one thing we're not seeing, especially during summer, fans and misters. Are they going to have that? Any idea?
look, that's a never-ending challenge. Even some people. We know the perfect location in town. It's the Flagler Steakhouse in the back of the Breakers on the second floor, and we all model that. And misters, we're not. Some people debate whether those just provide more humidity. We could have air blowers. We could have a combination of things. But we are working on and have worked from day one with Kima about that, and we're going to great lengths to make this a really enjoyable space. There is some indoor dining space in the 111 Olive. And so if someone says, hey, I want to eat lunch here today, but it's really hot, we'll seat you inside the air conditioning. So there is a combination. And then we have additional space on the roof.
Is there, since we're questioning you, since you're here, is the 7 foot a magic number? For example, would 6 foot work? What's the rationale behind 7 feet?
I mean, we've, beat this to death. Unfortunately, the Kima, our interior design team and the ownership aren't here, Yeah, 6 isn't allowed either. The 4 is allowed.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
We're here trying to come up with
Yeah.
this. So real quick, can you,
Then it is, I mean, 6, I mean, 6 for, 20 feet of the wall, make it 6, everything else is allowed. It wouldn't be the end of the world, and I'm speaking on behalf of a bunch of people who aren't here. But I guess the other way to ask the question, if we can do 6, what's 7? I don't know. Yeah, this is very subjective.
Can
but-
you do me a favor and switch? You had a photograph from your walk this morning of looking up at the built condition of
Can I
that
get
area.
to my presentation, Chris? Thank you.
Oh, it's not on this one? Sorry.
Yeah.
And maybe you can just, I think it's all blocked out by temporary construction fencing, so it may be hard to delineate.
Areas, but you can see.
Yeah, it's,
Back a couple more.
yeah, can you correlate there to the vertical, what looks like wood slatting? Can you relate that plane?
That's all the way out to the low planter wall area. What we did is we
No,
left
no, not the wall, above, the soffit, hanging from the soffit.
Yeah, that's where the screen, so you see the soffit, now let me go
So
to
is
the
your,
floor plan.
your screen rollers are behind that?
Let me go to the floor plan. So, let me,
You could point it out on that one.
Yeah.
Oh, I see, it's between the columns, so now we get it.
so
Okay,
yes,
yeah.
right. So that's where the big overhang comes out right to there.
Right.
See that line? I don't know, you probably can't see it, but you see my cursor?
Yeah.
So that's where the overhang is that you just saw. Then there's columns. By the way, it's not that we want to give you a really simple excuse, but they're not freestanding fences. They're integrated and they're supported by building into the columns and other things, so.
I get it. But your screen housing would fall between the columns, behind that vertical
Correct.
soffit material?
Yes.
And then the wall, the subject wall, that's the variance component, is in plane with the upper floors? It's not
It's
beyond it?
just this piece right here.
Right, but it's in plane with the floors above?
In plane with the overhang that you
Right,
saw.
so essentially,
above.
it's just continuation of the line of the structure
So if you
that
go-
is there?
yeah.
Okay, all right, yeah,
It goes back up to
exactly.
here.
To jump, there was one more
That
photo, go down, that was looking to the northwest.
Yeah.
Yeah, right there. So go back to that one. That one right there. So the white line is your first plane at the garage level. That's
Yep.
the plane of the wall.
There's the column, there's our
Gotcha.
screen wall, right? It's
Yep.
right at the, way below,
Gotcha. And the drop-off area, is that a flush curb condition?
Yes.
It is. It's just the curb at that section between the alley access and the drop-off.
Yep.
And last question, these oak trees are all going to grow and limb up and create a canopy?
Yeah, we've-
Okay. All right, is anybody else as unclear as I was? Any other questions for the applicant while they're up here? Kim?
Yes, I also had a similar thought to Mr. Chairman about the 6 feet, because, the side and the rear height is allowed by right is 6. So at least there's some rationale for the 6, and then it's also kind of less oppressive than 7. It's like, for me as a short person, even 1 feet make a big difference, I think.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's come back to that. I just want to get make sure everybody's clear on what we're looking at, and then we can discuss some of these things later.
Mr.
O'Reilly?
Chair, your question about the height and Kim's, the property owner would like to address the 6 feet, 7 feet.
sure.
How did we arrive at that? Maybe that'll be instructive.
Absolutely.
Hi, Andrew Dance with Brand Atlantic,
Yeah.
on behalf of the property owner. I wanted to say a couple things. First of all, diversity is a top interior designer for F&B, for hospitality in the world. They're out of Athens and London. They do some of the 5- and 6-star hotels all over Europe and around the entire world. We were very lucky to have them, that the restaurant operator, Kima, which is a top 5 restaurant in New York City and the #1 Mediterranean Greek restaurant in New York City, over Avra and Milos, which Milos is coming here as well. We are very lucky to have them and to invest a bunch of money into this space and have their vision realized. The idea behind the 7-foot wall, is people aren't 7 feet tall typically, but there are a lot of people who are 6 feet tall. It is very jarring at eye level to have the top of a wall be something that kind of interferes with your experience in the public realm. So if you're walking on a sidewalk and you're just looking at the top of a wall, that is not something that is really a positive experience. So that's kind of the reason for there is magic behind the math. It's not just let's arrive at some middle ground. The second, and I think the last part of this thing is, it is an overall experience, and this wall is very transparent. It's not something that's you just used a word that was I forget. You said looking at something, it kind of feels it wasn't intrusive. I forget the word you used. Sorry. But anyway, long story short, it's something that this is actually something where you can interact between the spaces. And as I think you probably all know, seat count and how things work is what makes these restaurants work. And that's the technical answers to your questions. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you, I appreciate it.
Could I ask one question just on operations? I think
Go ahead.
the comment about the roll downs, I mean, every picture I see with the roll downs is really about the sun and screening. Here, you're on the east side of a big building downtown, and I'm guessing they're not open for breakfast. It's more of a lunch and dinner thing.
This is a lunch and dinner operation. The roll downs are really about driving rain. We have there are actually two overhangs or canopies that are happening here. You can see on the image, there's actually a high one that's right underneath the parking levels. There's going to be another projection that comes out that's a kind of right at the base of the wood soffit that comes out. So it'll be, and so there is plenty of rain protection here. This is really about it's about security and like hurricane driving rain. This is the intention of this restaurant is to be Mykonos. That is what the owner of Mike Engelades from Kima is from the island of Simi. He's operated restaurants in Mykonos. He's bringing Mykonos to you, and that's what he's done to New York City. And this is that is an outdoor experience. So we have the perfect operator for a great space. And while I appreciate the planning presentation that we were left with no FAR, and that's how we kind of created this problem. This was my way of figuring out a way to buy the land and pay a record price for the land to deliver this building was, you know what, I think I can do this. And I met with Harvey, I met with the mayor to ask, what do you think about this? Can we do something with the alley? Well, yeah, we've tried to do the alley. This was actually a very intentional thing before I even closed on the property because I was paying a record price for the land. So I really hope that that's taken into consideration here. This was not something that we were left with. It wasn't a condition we created. It was an order to do it, and it was very studied and intentional. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Before I start, I first want to declare that I had a conversation with RV because I was late. I want to declare that I had a conversation with him.
Oh, ex parte?
Yes, ex parte declaration, yes. The other question is, what is the impact if you just move the wall in? I mean, can you kind of explain that? In one of the rendering, I saw like you have three tables, but the explanation I heard over before that is the impact was going to be in the bar, but I saw the bar further in, so I wasn't really clear on the impact if you just, as staff, make the recommendation to just move the wall in, and you don't have that issue anymore.
You want Keith to answer that?
You're not going to like my answer.
So this shows the proposed plan. And again, when we did this concept 3 years ago, we had a bar, we had dining, we had all of this, we had planters, we had creative, decorative walls. We originally had a bar here. What Kima, again, this isn't, let's kind of put some tables and chairs out here. They've gone into the science of delivering food at the busiest time of the day. So the kitchen is in the 111 Olive, and we have paths that lead into the dining experience. But the bar, which is a really important part of their activity, and so this seating, which is what I was talking about earlier, this is the actual plan. So at the moment, our decorative screened wall is right here. If we moved it within the setback, all of the seating would be removed from the bar activity area. So that's what I meant by they have, banquettes, big tables for families. They have great cafe seating. They have smaller arrangements of tables, a big variety of things. They have the activation of the alley with tables. Then they have a bar. They have a big community table area. And then they have seating for table height seating in the bar area. That's again, critical part of their operation. So it would have been way too easy to say, sure, let's just move it back here and we're done. It wipes out literally all of the table height bar seating in the lounge area. So.
Okay, thank you.
So what?
Go ahead.
What's that?
Was it?
Yeah.
Keith, was there? Did you consider any other type of screening other than, you pointed out glass you
Oh.
could do? Is there a type of screening that the city was okay with that was more opaque, or?
So we considered, a ton of different ideas. It was a real collaborative design process. Owners, developers, architects, interior designers. We did not share with the city any other ideas. We loved when we finally got to this terracotta style masonry open wall. It reminds me, you guys are all familiar with Palm Beach stuff, but it reminds me of the treatment of the terracotta open. They used as screen walls, parapet walls all over the town of Palm Beach. And it's we do a lot of work over there. It's one of the most favorite ways to have an opaque wall that lets air through, you can see through, but still is really creative. So when we saw the terracotta version that the designer thought was perfect for this concept, Mediterranean concept, bring Mykonos to people here in Florida, we loved it. I don't like to always say this, we would have never thought of that. So, we consider ourselves good designers.
Was there anything you saw that was maybe more transparent that maybe the city would approve of? Or?
Well, I think the city is doing their job, which is to interpret a code. It's a strange element between the two setbacks, and we all talked about it. What is this thing? Well, it's not, we ended at the end of the day, we didn't disagree. We didn't really agree, but we didn't disagree. It's a fence. And so I don't think the city is saying, just make it a different fence. I think they say the code says you're allowed 4 foot high, and that's what you get. And I think DAC is here today, and every month to allow us a very unique exception to that staff's position. But maybe my friend Harvey can elaborate on that.
Well, Michael, good question. The issue isn't the transparency. We're all good with the transparency. It exceeds the transparency requirement. The issue between ownership and the staff is simply the height of that one section, not the transparency.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then, while you got this diagram up, maybe this is a question for staff. Are there seating limitations on this restaurant? I mean, what's seating by right in the sidewalk versus the zone where the extra bar seating is? There's enclosed air-conditioned dining on the south side of the alleyway too, right?
So I believe that on the south side of the alleyway is more so the restaurant operations, like the kitchen itself. The dining area really is what's under the office building.
But there's tables in the building, the Galleria.
Within the alleyway, yes, as well.
No, in the Galleria.
So it's interesting because there's a couple things that play into the criteria. First of all, when we presented this project in 2021, the seating plan didn't look any different. There was a bunch of tables and chairs inside 111, inside the alley, and inside the understory, you call it the first lower level open to the street in 300 Banyan. That did not change. So as far as, there's also some other criteria. We need 150 minimum seats for the liquor license. That's a really important criteria for F&B operations. If not, you pay, $1 million to get your liquor license, then you don't get one. So there isn't, is the way I see it, and I understand the code pretty well, there isn't anything different about the number of chairs, the arrangement of tables and chairs and bars that we presented and were approved in DAC. Like the project we presented in 2021, everybody expected to see a bunch of people eating and drinking in 111 Olive, in the alley, and under this building. And that's what it looks like today. Like if you squinted your eyes and I showed you the two plans, they wouldn't look any different. So there's just some technical things here that are a little complicated. So I don't know if that answered your question.
I mean, you have a lot of air conditioning and closed dining on the south side of the island.
We have, so
how many
there's
seats? How many
when you
seats?
say a lot,
Well, how
it's
many
not
seats?
a lot.
How many seats?
So this is the Kima back-of house and kitchen, and then the dining room, there's probably, I don't know, what is it, 30, 40, 50 tables inside there? 60 seats. 60 seats inside. So, yeah, open for great individual tabletop dining, but also a unique part of this is they want to be able to have private parties and things like that. And that's where they envision having that in this front portion right along Olive Avenue. In the back of it's the kitchen and operations for the restaurant.
All right, and then just one last question. Good, that last diagram you had previous to this. So, for example, there where all the two tops are east of the bar.
Yes.
If that wall, if it was 4 feet, would comply, and you're your screen enclosure, this is a question for staff. Does the screen enclosure, it could be anywhere. It can be out to the outside, the sidewalk side of the wall, or it could be in line with a structural column grid? Does it matter?
Yeah, so the screening element, the roll-down mesh could be within that area because it's, again, the component of the structure. So the issue is the wall, the freestanding masonry wall there.
So they could still have the roll-down screen mesh at the east face of the beam above, right, of the structure above the overhang? They can drop a roll-down screen
Yeah,
on
the
that,
code does not speak
on that
to
plane regardless of any, okay, all right. Anything else? Okay. Why don't we just see if there's any public comment on this, and then we'll just continue. Any public comment on this case? Anyone? All right, seeing none, we'll close public discussion, and maybe we just continue with.
Mr. Chair, do I have an opportunity for a brief rebuttal of the staff's position?
Sure.
Sure. So, stepping back and putting this in perspective, this is pretty minor variance request on a project that was approved 3 years ago, truly unique, combining existing historic building with new building on a tight site across an alley and fully integrating it. It's remarkable that we haven't been back to you with other requests for relief. So, putting this in perspective, we're arguing over 3 feet on a wall that's 29.5 feet long, and that is the only problem that this developer has encountered from what they conceptualized 3 years ago. So that in itself is remarkable. We're obviously meeting the spirit and intent of this. We'll respectfully disagree with the staff. We understand why they're having to characterize it this way, but the role of this board, you are granted broad discretion, and I will read it to you again, to you determine what is appropriate here, and you've always exercised that broad discretion very wisely, and we're asking you to do that again today because I think you're being presented with a form over substance issue, and we're asking you to look at the substance, not the form. Let's not let the tail wag the dog here. We are not asking you to create a precedent that would not be helpful in the remainder of the DMP. In fact, if anyone else comes to you with a similar situation, I would encourage you to approve that as well. And as Roger alluded to, we could build this 16 feet high right up to our soffit if we wanted to. It is not our goal to block this off. Our goal is simply to solve the visual, auditory, criminal homelessness problems that are beyond our control. Those are extraneous, and we're trying to deal with them as best we can and still honor and meet the transparency portions of the code. So I realize this is a little out of your comfort zone. We're asking you to choose between us and a strict reading of your code, but you have the ability and discretion to do that. And if we don't do it, I think we get a lesser project in our downtown. And again, I encourage you this coming 12 months as you re-examine the DMP, maybe we think about active use, the way it's defined. I encourage you to think about, is this really a fence under the code? I don't think the founding fathers of our code ever thought about this or that this would be characterized as a fence. So with that, I will say thank you for considering this. I know it's not an easy decision, but we could put plants, if you can grow plants in that much shade, Nick, I don't know, that could go right up to the 16-foot soffit overhang, which is one of the staff's other recommendations is put plants in. We could run the one that we are allowed to have all the way to the top. We think we are seeking the minimum required to make this work for our world-class operator. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Okay, we've heard from applicant, staff, no public comment. Taking
I have a quick question.
Discussion.
Mr. Chair, quick question. So I'm still unclear on, I know what we being asked here for direction on whether or not to approve what we saying is offense based on the code. But my question is, would that set precedence however we vote on this? That's a question for staff, meaning, because it seems like there is a I don't want to say misunderstanding on what offense is, but it seems that the way this is being presented, the applicant doesn't see it as a fence, but the code is saying this is a fence. So now, are we setting precedents on how we vote on this? And sort of want to understand staff position on, basically, it's sort of unclear on, because it's just a matter of height. They can go higher. It's just a preference, in my opinion, that to go up to 7. I'm 6'2", so it still will be higher, taller than, I don't call it fence, but it will be taller than me, so I wouldn't see the top of it. But my question is, are we setting precedents here? How do we approach this, and whether or not this is something that needs to be clear on the code? Because
yeah, I think in terms of setting a precedent, I mean, that is a possibility, right? I mean, anytime we grant a variance, we set a standard that there is an exception to that. So should another restaurant project building come in with a freestanding structure that meets that definition of a fence, and they see it fit within their design, their operations, that they require, more height than what we grant, then yes, someone else could come in with a similar ask. Whether or not that's still granted, again, is up to the board's discretion. Again, staff's concern with this, and we are talking about the small area between the minimum and maximum setback, is again that having this 7-foot high wall, whether it's perforated or not, if you saw from their other angles, I mean, if you look at it from a different angle, rather, to the sides or anything like that, it looks like a closed off wall. The only time you really realize that it's a perforated wall is if you're standing straight onto it at a 90 degree. Again, the combination of that with the mesh roll down screen and the fact that this area is under air, it really starts teetering into an enclosed space that should have been counted toward FAR. And so that was the constraint. It was very much a space that was supposed to be designed, a very open, visible concept, creating that higher elevation wall. Like you said, 6 foot, you don't see into that space as much. It's not as interactive as it once was. And that was staff's concern with revisiting that variance. Is part of the reason we gave the variance for active use in this area. Yes, it's active, but it also has to engage with the public realm. It has to be visible with the pedestrians. And that, while it's a smaller portion, that is the worry, again, is that this kind of cuts off that activity. We, again, still feel that there are viable alternatives which would allow seating to be relocated elsewhere in the concept, or just having a lower wall with different elements, whether that's landscaping or something else at a 4-foot high level, still creates that separation, still allows the mesh roll down. But on a nice, clear, sunny day, passerby, can see and interact with that space that's presented.
Okay, great, thanks.
I guess my thought is if it's 4 feet, I guess the homelessness issue is someone's going to just reach over across the table. I don't know if it's the magic height as far as to prevent the homeless people from, grabbing people's food and purses and things like that.
Well, I don't know if we can address that.
I suppose that's their
architecturally.
concern, is what I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can address that architecturally. That's a whole separate subject that's sort of out of our realm right now.
I just have a comment. So I don't know, I see this as kind of a minor variance, being that's only 3 feet higher, and it allows for a screening so you can see through it. And then there's planters on the side that are dropped at 3 to 4 feet, at least on the corner. And I know at the beginning when they first brought this to DAC that they had platforms on the left-hand side of the restaurant area, and they took that out because of the accessibility and liability with the waiters because of the functionality of the restaurant. So to have an increase of seating because of, licensing and all that, and that allows for that. But, it's such a subtle thing when you start to look at screening and walls where light's passing through and views you can see through, and there's still activity and there's still ways of, the sidewalk, there's still a large amount of area to traverse and work your way around. And, to give that privacy and still allow transparency, and and you think about it, if you did have a planner that reached 7 feet, you would probably get less transparency. Yes, it would be softened edge, but that's subjective. So I think having the terracotta, which lends itself to Meisner and Palm Beach, is actually a good idea for Akima, and it ties into the kind of traditional aspects of Palm Beach and West Palm in, the detailing of our facades. But, I think it's a minor thing, the 3 feet, and I think it would bring value to that, to Kima, and I know that that would be more functional as, seating and circulation paths. So that's just a comment I had for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a comment from the city attorney's office. Keep in mind as a board that you're going to need to address the standards when you make your decision or the motion or whatever, which way you're going to go. Because there are standards which you need to address in whatever determination you make. So, and Chris, do you have those available that they can look at? In terms of setting precedent, each one of these variance cases is unique because there are different standards that they have to meet. So, and if there was a similar situation, that applicant would have to meet those standards. So I don't think it's precedent setting to that extent. But just keep in mind, as you're looking at this, whatever decision you're going to make, you need to address the standards, and the board needs to find, if you're going to grant the variance, that they meet these 10 standards.
Okay, thanks. Hey, Chris, I got one question, comment. If you go back to that last diagram you had. Oh, boy. Okay. You know what? Let's just take a 3-minute break. Someone's got to go. You go ahead. No, I don't want Brian to miss any really important discourse here. So check your cell phones for 3 minutes. Anyone else needs to use the restroom?
You need the Jeopardy.
We'll take a 3-minute break. Is everybody here? Thank you. All right. I guess when I'm looking and thinking about this in more detail and the building, which is a beautiful building, my only reservation, my concern is on this diagram is when the screens are down in the area of the subject variance request, and we have just, 2 stories of gray screen from the soffit to the sidewalk with nothing, no planting at the narrowest point between the trees. I think it's going to create a very unwelcome condition. But that's my opinion. I would encourage the applicant, and I don't know if you need to take some time to restudy, but if there's a way you could image or render that area with the screens down, maybe it needs a planting strip on the outside, maybe it needs to be set back a few, maybe the screen needs to be in line with the column line and you address the planting and the proposed breeze block fence differently. The mechanism for that roll screen that's out at the edge now, I think, is going to detract from the architecture unless it's, I don't know if it's built into the soffit. The architect can answer that, or if it's going to be, if it's an element that drops down, I think it's going to somewhat ruin the pure quality of that cantilevered element. So I think it seems like there's some more thought that needs to be taken for this whole component that we're looking at today. But as I see it now, I picture it in the down position, and I just think it's not going to be very nice at all. It's going to be a very detractive component. I understand 100% the need for this condition and how things evolve, but it's been going, I understand all that, no understanding. But I think the way it is now, it's not going to be the best it can be. So I think it needs to be rethought technically. And in terms whether it's a component of landscape, so I don't know if that's something we can resolve today, but I have reservations with the way it's going to be completed as shown. So I have reservations approving it as conditioned.
Incorrectly characterized how the screen
If you're going to speak, you need to come up, yeah.
Andrew Dans for the applicant again. The screen is integrated into the lower soffit that's not built yet. It's part of the restaurant design. So it's concealed. Goes behind, it's in the column.
Can we look at an image? Because I think we're all kind of talking.
Bennett, do you have sort of something that we can, you want to show where the screen is? And the wall actually conceals the screen. That is one of the reasons we don't.
Well, good. Okay, we'll stop there. But where the proposed wall is in the variance element, it's out in the flat soffit section above. Go. Right, go back.
We're just finding the correct slide, apologies.
Yeah, right there. That was a good one.
You want to go
Or
back?
go back one. Right there. Stop. Okay. So the soffit, the column line that we see, the vertical concrete columns, the soffit that's there. I understand that part with the wall that's in compliance will be the mechanism's concealed, but the one that's projecting out, how is it? It's coming from the upper soffit, or is there a lower roof above it? I don't.
It's coming from the low roof, and sorry, Bennett Gale with Brand Atlantic. So you can almost see it here in this early conceptual rendering. It's sort of half deployed, maybe 1 foot, but you see this very shallow black line here. That is the height of the roll downs. It's only at this lower canopy, which is about 12 feet high. It does not extend up to the upper.
I guess that's what we can't see in any renderings, because is there a rendering of the breeze block wall with the mechanisms and everything else?
We do not have one shown because the intent is for that only to be during inclement weather and off hours, since it's also our tamper-proof security measure. But that roll-down screen does drop behind the masonry screen wall. So when they are fully deployed and fully down, you will still see the masonry screen wall.
Behind? Oh, earlier I thought you guys
Correct.
said it was on the outside.
That's why I raised my hand.
Right.
It was incorrectly stated.
Okay.
Yes. So when it is fully deployed, you will still see the masonry screen walls and any plantings in their entirety. Yes.
Okay. So
It truly is to avoid the condition.
if you
that-
go back to the
Go to this,
elevation with the breeze block, or
I was going to say.
Here.
or right there. So
Yes.
there's going to be, on the top of the breeze block, that's just the cap. The mechanism is going to be, call that 12 feet tall, 13 feet tall? of
Yes,
screen?
about 12 and a half feet tall. And you can see the vertical black posts here, which are abutting the column. Those are the tracks for the roll down, which will come down behind this screen. So if we were to render this with the roll down screens deployed and down, the only difference you would see is that semi-transparent PVC hurricane-proofed roll-down mesh in this zone here above the height of the fence, and then it would be behind this masonry.
That is to avoid the condition. Can you go back to the Cocos
here?
right there?
Yes.
So we identified the product that is the best for this. Best for this. It's been deployed in many locations around Florida. We went on a tour with the architect from Greece to Miami, to Fort Lauderdale, and walked all these stores. These are great. Coco's in Coconut Grove, which is the bottom example. This is a first-class restaurant. You can see what their condition is with the white screens pulled down on the right. The top example, Bacan in Wynwood. This was just on a warm day. This was in June when we were there, and they had it pulled all the way down, and we're like, oh my God, we cannot have this. Like, there has to be something, some visual appearance that truly softens this. You know, this is kind of, but what is allowed today? If you were to say no, what we're getting is the right-hand side, the top right. And that's what we responded to, is we don't want that, and nor should you.
I got you. It's just hard to understand from these renderings.
Understood.
We can't really see what's happening, so, all right. All right. Is there any way then, with that, like that image there, can you have a low planting strip at the sidewalk side of the breeze block wall?
On the, for Arthur, can you go to?
Like go to that site plan you had up.
Yeah, go to the site plan.
Right there. Can you see if you have
If there was we would probably need relief because that's in the sidewalk. So we would need some, if you allow us to put some planters there, we're happy to do that. Here. And if we had to put like some vines or something like that on it to kind of make it, to soften that, we're happy to do that.
Or the wall could be back.
The wall.
Or the wall could be further west, 18 inches.
It really impacts the seat counts, which is important to their operation.
Okay, all right.
Can I just ask a real quick question? Because I think it comes down to this sort of, seat area, and I understand both sides, really appreciate all the info, but just from a technical standpoint, I see all the two tops there east of the bar. There's 9 of them. If you look to the south, there are tables, 2 tops, that are outside where that wall is on that area. With regard to not changing seat counts, because I know it's critically important for the business model, can that wall slide such that the first row of streetscape tables are on the street side and the 2 groups of the 6 tables are on the bar side, so that you're not changing any counts, you're just mimicking the seat tables that are on the outside of that perforated wall on the area just east of those round tables? So it's really just moving the wall but keeping the seat count the same. It just happens to be that 3 of those tables are on the street side.
Again, I'll start just by saying we are not a restaurant operator. We have never cooked a meal for anyone professionally or served a table. These guys are among the best in the world. This is their design. I can imagine their response to that would be, you've now just made us have to walk all the way around to kind of get to some tables, and this is, they have their vibe and their kind of how they, get people to come here. People love their bar environment, and so there's a high demand for tables around the bar, and for larger groups, they've got tables in this kind of area, and it is there is an incredible music program with their restaurant operation. I highly encourage you guys to go to. I highly encourage you to go to their store in the Flatiron on 5th Avenue and 19th Street. There is the DJ booth is right here, and it is a celebratory thing for people. So it is all part of one. That's kind of like the pivot point. That's like the dog leg of the project, how the thing works. They're not looking for more tables outside. This is kind of more like, it's almost like overflow for all intents and purposes.
I understand that. I'm just trying to get to a point because this feels like we're at an impasse, and if we can get
I would
to
offer one
somewhere.
thing, that there was when we had designed the space and marketed it as a space and had it approved, there was a 2-foot platform that this was built up on. We thought that was going to be something that people would like. They didn't want the trip hazards and stuff like that coming across the alley. And so if you added a 4-foot fence to that, it would have been at 6 feet above grade. So we're actually only asking for 1 foot relief.
I had another comment with the encroachment of that wall. The only condition I see that's different than the others with the planter and the wall is that corner where you kind of enter in to the right. There's the planter and the wall. So on the other side, when you enter into the main lobby or the main entrance to the restaurant, that area right there. So you have the 4-foot planter, and then you have the 7-foot wall. Was there a reasoning why you put both? Wouldn't it be better just to have the planter in that view, because then you can see directly in, rather than have both layers?
Mm-hmm. So this is the primary host stand and entry point for the restaurant, and so there needed to be a backdrop for the valet stand, the host, the reservation devices, all the traffic that would be coming through here. So there needs to be somewhat of a buffer between all the seating here and that highly trafficked area. But the reasoning for this masonry screen wall is being non-contiguous, and I'll try and find this diagram quickly to show the actual extents. But the idea is that you get glimpses of the bar from this 10+ foot wide opening, not only from page southeast, but page southwest as well, that you do get these apertures and glimpses from a diagonal perspective into the bar area, which is why it doesn't fully wrap the corner or branch over the host stand or appear anywhere on the alley facing side as well. But in short, to answer your question, the reason why we have both layers there is because it is a highly trafficked area and a bit of an identifier as a marquee entry for the restaurant.
Sure.
Because that wall could potentially be lowered in that area, so you have more of a view inward from that, and still have an area for the host and for that kind of backdrop. That's a possibility.
If that was a consideration for the board that made the difference, I will take that back, and we'll accept that and move on. But I think
Say that again.
this is he's identifying this area right here, which has the 7-foot wall as well as a planter box in front of it.
Because from your path from the sidewalk, you would have that angle, and that sight line would direct right into the main area if you didn't have that kind of 7-foot wall. You had something maybe more screened where you have more openings, or it's lowered, where you just had the planter, possibly.
If that was what moved the board to feel confident with this decision, we would say yes.
Because it would mimic the other side as well, because that just has the planter at 4.
Brian, what are you suggesting? Can you?
Oh, I was looking at, where the host is, and then there's a condition where there's a planter and the wall.
Right there.
There's 2 layers.
Right.
Right. So if you just had the planter, you would have more of a view into the restaurant from the sidewalk, because it's at an angle as well. So you'd have this kind of sight line directly in. So it gives you more visibility to see into the restaurant, as well as you'd still have that other sight or other screened wall, which gives you that kind of transparency and screening and a little privacy.
And it would reduce the variance request.
Exactly.
Mr. Chair, very quickly, I agree with everything that Board Member Laura had said. I don't think this is a big deal in terms of them finding a solution. This is code semantics versus a final operator that knows their business and knows how to operate and what they need to do to be successful. We have a location that's very tough. As soon as you're off Clematis and you're on North Olive Avenue and you're going north or south of it, they're like dead zones. So I appreciate the owner coming in, and I appreciate the operator coming in, telling them what they need to make this successful. And this 7-foot wall isn't going to make or break this space. In fact, it's going to create that defensible space that they need to operate properly, but at the same time, permeable, so people can see in, they can hear the music, they can see the lights at night. It is still interactive. we're parsing down to the definition of a fence, and I think we're not seeing the forest for the trees here. We have an excellent end user here that we should be trying to accommodate, and this small section, even adding Board Member Laura's suggestion, which I think is a great suggestion, put the planter there and open up that side view, who cares? Because people are waiting, but there's a planter creating that defensible space, not just this flat wall. I don't have a problem with any of that because I think it's going to be a successful space. They know their business. We don't. And I get a little weary crossing the lines of trying to tell a restaurant operator or someone how best they should run their business. We have the ability to look at this and objectively say, we understand staff's position. It's a tough position because this fence is static. But this operator, this user, this space is not, and I think they came up with a very good solution, and it's unfortunate we couldn't get to a sort of a better meeting ground on this. I would support the variance for the 7 feet inside of that encroachment with the amendment to maybe eliminate that east-west running, so that short wall by the planter, and they're gonna get that same opacity that they want, that defensible space, and the rest of it complies. Staff doesn't not like the wall, they like the wall. It's just we have a fence definition that's so old and static that it can't move with the creativity of what we're trying to achieve here. They've got one shot at this and they have to get it right out of the box because this is not clematis. They're on the sidelines. So we need to do everything we can to help these guys make sure they're going to be successful in this space. Having said that, I don't know if we're going to get there today, but I would fully support a variance that had that modification that Board Member Alera had put forward. The way they've configured it, they know their business. Thank you.
We would accept that recommended condition or amendment.
And I'm sorry, I didn't hear where there was some talk about a landscape strip perhaps between the sidewalk and the wall. I didn't see exactly where that landed, if that landed anywhere. It was still keeping all the counts the same and the wall the same, but.
There is no landscape strip that we're proposing.
So regarding that too, the applicant and their current design really couldn't accommodate an additional landscape strip between the sidewalk and their wall now without stepping the wall back because we have a requirement to keep an 8-foot clear sidewalk. So the moment that a landscape bed is introduced here, that creates a conflict there. So if they were to, try to accommodate additional landscaping on that edge, they would probably have to step the wall at least, a foot or two back to kind of accommodate something else.
And that was my question in terms of adjustments, if that negatively impacts that space, or if you could move that wall 12 inches or 18 inches, put a landscape strip and soften that wall, maybe that might be possible.
No. The suggestion for a landscaped edge there, we said if you'd like provide us the variance to do that, to add either planters or even potted plants, we're happy to do. You're a foot, you can see how specific this diagram is. Pulling in the thing a foot is going to impact the seat count. It's going to get rid of three tables.
Andrew, so if we did that, we would be in front of you for a variance on diminishing the width of the sidewalk, which we think would be more problematic than the proposed solution.
I think what the board member is suggesting is that you put the planter inside, right, and either eliminate a row of tables or put it inside.
Oh,
so that
I'm sorry, I misunderstood on the
it's
inside.
stepping back the wall.
I'm talking about moving the wall 12 inches, which it
make
looks like you have
room for
room, but
landscaping.
A little strip.
Yeah, and I
Which I
don't know what it pinches on the table and the seating widths and ADA and
yeah, that's just if there
aisles.
is any room and it doesn't affect your operations or table count, and maybe the city can get mitigation with softening that as a move, maybe that's an option. But if you can't move it 1 single inch and you're going to have that hardscape right there, then
we can look into that. I misunderstood. I thought it would be on the outside of the wall, which then would trigger the sidewalk width variance.
put the planting on the outside wall, shift the wall
Shift the wall
further
in.
west to accommodate it.
I don't know if we can
so
do
you don't
that.
need a variance.
No, yeah, Bennett with Brand Atlantic. I can just add for clarity, we've explored planters elsewhere on the project, and we've been told by multiple nurseries, landscape architects, that the minimum viable width for a planter is 24 inches in order for the plants the roots to grow. We've tried to pinch that down to 12 inches in places, and have already experienced a lot of dead plants elsewhere on this project. So the minimum width for a planter to have plants that actually thrive, which was discussed in an earlier hearing today, would be 2 feet, and that would clearly indicate those last 6 tables. But just wanted to add that.
Here's maybe a recommendation, because it seems that, I mean, I like the wall feature, and honestly, I don't think it's a fence because of the use of it in the location. Because I think a fence is something you see in a property line to try to separate two different properties. So maybe we should give staff direction to basically review other features that maybe fall on the fence that's really not a fence. Because it's, if you think about it, it's putting a fence in the middle of your property to separate two use. Logically, no person will be doing that to set a fence in the middle of their yard. There are scenarios you can do that to separate space, but I think under the definition, that's really why the reason we are here is because the feature that they are introducing is being called a fence because there is nothing else to call it. And maybe we might have to give staff direction into maybe we need to be expanding the definition for other things that's not actually a fence. Because I believe if there was something else for it, they probably will call it something else. It's being a fence right now.
That's an interesting suggestion. If it is not a fence, maybe the variance goes away entirely. I'm not sure. Staff would have to address whether any obstruction in between the minimum and maximum setbacks triggers a variance, but we know calling it a fence, and it's not a fence. So, that might solve the problem as well.
I still think it's like the fundamental issue, like trying to boil this down and simplify it, is that the variance request, and maybe I'm unclear, is you're asking essentially to put building area in an area that's not allowed by the height as well as the FAR. You're with the wall and the roll down structure is, I don't know, call it 12 feet tall.
So
you're creating building enclosure, perceived building enclosure beyond the setback line and beyond the FAR.
So again, the plan that was presented in 2021, if you look at the arrangement and the use of spaces, is identical to what you see today. There is no, we are not asking for an increase in FAR.
Without the height, though.
There's no part of this variance request, no part of this review other than staff's comments recently that brought up the word FAR, period. And so there is no request today for FAR. We have the use of the space originally. It was approved as a fully activated F&B operation, and that's what it is today. You would then say that we're using the alley for additional FAR, and that's not true. It's closed between two buildings. It has a roof, and it has tables and dining, and that's not part of the application. The only part of this application is a variance for a fence in 27 feet of the property from 4 to 6, and the other part is the staff has asked this board to review what we've done relative to the changes in the space. There is no part of it that mentions the word FAR until staff comments. So,
but the height triggers.
No, the height does not trigger FAR.
So if you're going beyond the
it's not a interior air-conditioned space. It's no definition in the city's downtown master plan that would consider this FAR, and we know that because DAC voted on this project in 2021, and we maxed out our FAR. We have an active space on the roof as well, and it's not part of the FAR.
Right, but so the diagram that's up now, the wall height that's subject to the variance request, the wall's 7 feet high, and how high is, and then you have the structure, the roll-down structure is up at what height? 12?
The roll-down structure is under the canopy at 12-ish, call it, and it rolls from the 12-ish down to the ground to fasten. Putting it behind the wall, that's easy. We've got to coordinate how to do that with the banquettes and things like that. We could even, maybe there's an opportunity to take the portion of the roll down here, that's probably the part that bothers anybody, and maybe we can move it back to the column line. But again, the application and this process does not ask the DAC board to review roll-down screens. That's not part of the application. I'm just an architect, but we've done this all over town.
Why?
And
That's
it
why-
didn't, what's that?
No, that's what I was trying to clarify with staff
Yeah.
earlier. Where does the screen fall?
The
in
screen does not
category?
fall anywhere in
Yeah,
the.
but
Chris.
but you're building a structure that's 12 feet high.
Right. So
To accommodate
What
the
was
screen.
staff's intent on
not-
analyzing the FAR? I think Roger needs to understand.
I don't have a problem with it. I'm just thinking about like setting precedent here and allowing this to happen and,
understood. So
it's every other building that's set back and want to enclose areas to have basically enclosed sidewalk seating, which is fine, but we need to look at it in terms of what the request is relative to your analysis as staff and what's going to.
Right, and so to the very basics, the variance request is for the wall height within those maximum setbacks, for that additional 3 feet. As a component of that, and in regards to the review of that additional 3 feet, and whether or not you, as the board, grant that, staff raises the concern that having that wall at the 7 feet, having that wall at the extra 3 feet, with the addition of the roll downs that we now see is with a lower soffitted roof, and this area being under air, it is perceived, as you had said, as an enclosed dining space, which they cannot enclose because they do not have FAR. That was the argument that staff was trying to make with the FAR, is that they have maximized their FAR with the office space. What was approved as a very open, fluid concept is now leaning back toward being a more enclosed dining area, which raises concerns with FAR. That's, I guess, the only real concern there is the perception of having that.
So it's not exactly like, yeah, this is an FAR issue. It's, hey, this is kind of feeling like it, and we got to be careful because now you're saying any enclosed space that puts a wall up and you can blow air through it, like that's permeable, might be considered FAR, and I think that's a slippery slope. I don't like the fact that that was added. I wasn't going to say anything about it because the reality is this has nothing to do with that whatsoever. Them putting something up for defensible space is completely different than them. They could have closed it off. They could have just put a glass wall across the whole thing and called it, in the proper area to give it more sort of separation. But they're trying to thread that needle, I think, and I think we're missing the boat on this. There's an opportunity to look at this specific condition. It's not going to open up any precedents that I heard earlier. I disagree 100%. It's on a case-by-case basis. And this one, clearly, they're trying to achieve something that works for the use at this location in the city. It's a one-off. Every time it comes to us, it has to be analyzed and looked at that way. The FAR argument, I disagree with 100%, and you're going down a road and opening a can of worms that should never be opened because it's not FAR. It's outdoor space. How are we treating it? They could have put chairs out there and did nothing, and we would have had a dead outdoor space. Now we got an active use that has to work. I'm trying to say, and I can't say it enough, we're not on clematis here. So they got to give them the best shot they can, and we're arguing over a 3-foot semantics over the height of a portion of a wall that you can see through, stick your hand through, and get noise and light through. And it's such a small item, in my opinion. This is so minuscule.
Mr. Chair, I did want to go back and try to address your concern, and thank you, Ryan, because I agree. I think we're burning daylight here over something that in the big scheme of this project is minuscule. But to your point, Roger, when you drop that down, are we creating de facto new FAR? But I want to point out or remind, we can do that anyway. Wall or no wall, we're going to have the roll downs. We could drop them just like the images from Wynwood and Coconut Grove and create that same problem that you're legitimately concerned with. We could do that anyway. And that's what we're trying to avoid. That was part of this exercise, is so that that doesn't happen and make a beautiful restaurant look average.
Got it. Cool.
Thank you.
All right, so anybody else have any other questions or?
May I just have one more comment? And so I'm very sympathetic about, keeping the space, not reducing the space. Restaurants are a difficult business, and they, it's a world class, and the level and the restaurant patrons, would appreciate the privacy. But I do think, balancing out our precedent-setting potential, I think 6 feet, have the basis in the code for the side and the rear fence. So, and 6 feet would still give plenty of privacy. So I would feel very comfortable giving the variance at 6 feet.
Okay. All right, any other questions? I mean, you guys got everything, I think, presented in front of you. Like I say, I think it's a great project. We know the restaurant business is tough, and we'd like to support everything we can do to make it successful. And if anyone's, so you got 2 components, I think staff asked us to revisit. Do we need a separate vote on each of those? We have
really, you're only voting for
the
the variance request. The second component was just more justification
just for us
to
revisit the whole picture. Okay, perfect. All right, does anybody want to make a motion on this?
Maybe you should try your 6-foot proposal and see what happens, or?
I don't know.
Or what?
If they want
Okay, I'll
6
stay out of
foot.
it. I don't know that 6 foot makes a difference. I think that.
It's not going to make a difference.
I think that
I don't think it does, really.
I think that the concern seems to be, we have the variance standards, and we need to justify getting,
Right.
finding that they comply. My 2 cents would be that the big issue seems to be that they're just getting, this is just how they want to do it because it'll look nicer, but I think that it's arguable that the functionality of this space then is something that's not giving them a special privilege. It's not resulting from their actions other than, they designed a restaurant space that seems to be something that we all knew was going to be in that space. I think maybe it's just good to have something like that on the record for purposes of future cases.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
All right, who's going to do
Yep.
this?
I'm going to give you a motion.
He's doing
I
it.
have the strongest feelings, so you should make the
Mr.
motion.
Chair, motion to grant a variance. I move that the Downtown Action Committee approve the variance requested included in DAC case number 2403 as follows. 1, a variance from section 94-109 definitions and minimum requirements, fence, to allow a decorative screen or partition wall to go up to a maximum height of 7 feet along the lot frontage. This is a 3-foot increase from the maximum permitted at 4 feet. This variance approval is made conditional upon restrictions, stipulations, and/or safeguards listed in the Planning Division staff report dated November 13th, 2024, that I move are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning code and consistent with downtown master plan and the comprehensive plan of the city of West Palm Beach. This motion is based upon the testimony presented along with the application submitted, which constitutes competent, substantial evidence that the standards in section 94-38D6 have been met. In addition, the granting of the variance approval is made conditional upon the following restrictions, stipulations, and/or safeguards that I move are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning code and consistent with the comprehensive plan and downtown master plan of the city of West Palm Beach. I would add that the side wall, east-west wall, be lowered or eliminated in lieu of that planter per board member Lara's suggestion to help with opening up that the views into that area.
Second.
Okay, motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, great. Thank you. All right, let's see, we got code revision cases, administrative appeals, I don't see any there. Any unfinished business? New business, that's a question for staff. Chris.
I have a question.
Sorry. And we could just put some questions out and look at it next time, but on, okay, downtown parking. Decades ago, we were doing everything we could possibly do to get people downtown, encouraging housing, free parking, limited pay parking. Now parking meters are expensive. It's around the clock or to midnight. Is there any study that's exists or being done that shows the income to the city from parking meters versus what it was before the changes were made? I just hear a plethora of complaints about people who are discouraged to come downtown because they can't park on the street without paying $20, or they go to a restaurant, they got to come out in 2 hours, or park mobile and update. It's really onerous, and is it necessary for the city to have all this street parking meter income, is my question. And is anybody assessing that within the city, the downtown?
Ana Maria Ponte, City Assistant Development Services Director, for the record. The parking administrator is the one in charge of that. When they changed the fees for the meters and the parking, they did a whole study of how to charge parking downtown in order to basically manage the demand. The concept is that the parking on the street is the most desirable. You want to park in front of where you are going, so it's the most expensive. And then the prices vary as they go the least convenient. So the most expensive is the on-street parking, and also depends on where you are located. The most expensive is the on-street parking on Clamares Street or on Rosemary. And then if you are on a street on Daytura next to Tamarind, is less expensive. Then it's the parking garages. And so the intention is to encourage people to park on where the highest ability of parking is, that is the parking garages, and leave the on-street parking for the quick turnaround. You're coming in, you're picking up your laundry and then leaving. So it's a quick turnaround, and that's why it's the most expensive, is the most beneficial for the retailers also. So if you're going to dinner for 3 hours, just park on the parking garage and walk a block. That's the concept. That's the way they establish the fees. We can ask the parking administrator if they have a report for the revenue that they are collecting for that. And I don't know. They should have a report of how much they're collecting and what the funds are being used for, and we can bring that back to you.
If it's $1 an hour, but now you park a couple hours, it can be $5, $6, $7. It seems a little oppressive. But it'd be, I get it. Or the people that come downtown, maybe, I don't know, it used to be, it would go like 7 to 7. So you could pull in front of your office building if you're going to work at night and not have to pay for parking as a resident or an employee or.
Which that's the reason why it was changed, because that is not the desired use for the on-street parking. If you are gonna be in your office for 8-9 hours, you're better park in a parking garage. And that was the intent of the change on the fees.
I'd love maybe just the big picture, though, is that, if there is this negativity, with dollars aside, if there's this transition culturally, like, I don't want to go downtown and downtown goes down, maybe you should say all the parking's free and business goes up as a big thing.
I hear that from a lot of young people. They don't want to come down and spend $12 to park and go to a bar or restaurant. They'll go anywhere else. So I think what my point is, we use that as a device to get people downtown. Now we're telling all those people that, no, we're going to jack up the prices because now we're successful. We don't need you anymore. So, anyways, think about it.
But I can definitely.
And if it comes down to another $100,000 a year, $50,000 a year, it'd be interesting to know. I don't think it's worth the money. I think it would be better money not to not have that income and encourage people to come downtown because we have affordable parking.
I'd love to.
Palm Beach jacks up their prices.
The experts on parking.
I'd love to see a profit and loss. I'd like to know just the overhead of that department. Do they maintain one?
Okay.
They are an enterprise, so
Right.
they have to produce the resources that they need to maintain their parking garages. So we can definitely bring them back to the board to give an update.
The vendors, the Park Mobiles of the world, they want to jack up prices because they make more money.
Yep.
And I think where the city's going to suffer because people are taking that in negative fashion because they're saying, we don't want us to park downtown. So that was number one. Number two, I think I've talked about this ad nauseum. The road conditions, like especially Flagler, is deplorable with potholes. It's like the marquee road of the city, and the condition is just absurd. Again, I'm sure it's a fiscal issue and the economics of fixing roads and projects going on, but it should be addressed because it's embarrassing. And then three, with all the tree planting and the master plan for the whole master scheme, who's responsible for maintaining trees and trimming up the oak trees? There's a lot of trees on a lot of streets where the bottom growth has kind of gone crazy and it looks like it doesn't get much attention.
Yeah, so generally speaking, for trees within the right-of-way, public right-of-way, that is the city's Public Works Department. Unless, and this has been more recent with a lot of these newer large-scale developments, many of them take up a large percentage of the block or span a long length. Those projects actually enter into a right-of-way maintenance agreement. So when they install street trees as part of their project, if they have bike racks, trash receptacles, things like that, that area is under the developer's responsibility when they get CO for the project. So it's hybrid currently. Some areas are city, maintained, and others, larger developments, would be the developer's responsibility.
Hey, Chris, this has to do with this motley crew of people up here. I don't know what changed at the city, but can we keep the door open in the back when we're on the board? Even as a volunteer board, I think we should have access to the bathroom versus having to leave the chamber to go to the bathroom. Just to point it.
It's not to point you out and embarrass you.
Yeah, I mean, to have to pause the meeting for my bathroom break was a little excessive. Maybe we can get the doors open up for us. I know, I don't want them back there either, but this is the crew you have.
Noted.
Just a suggestion.
Can I build?
Maybe down to changes we had
I
with
just-
security and
I-
everything else, so.
I did want to add one more to that pragmatic request. Can we get rid of these in the next 2 months? I don't know how to best do that, but I want them gone.
No?
And I'll keep asking till I get it.
Okay. Any other comments from anyone while we're here? All right. We'll adjourn today's meeting. Thank you all for your time.